Good evening. My name's Rod. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Rod.
And thank you, Steve, for asking us to come down. And ironically, I think just a few weeks before he asked me, Bill was down here. And what it was like. I grew up in a alcoholic home, ironically, right? And I grew up in the Columbia River Gorge down by Hood River, Oregon. And my father was a logger and an alcoholic. And a lot of the things that Ronnie described in his talk also happened at my house, and probably a little more, because there was active drinking in my home. And my father was violent like I am. And that went on for some time, and there was tragedy in my home when I was a little boy. My oldest brother got killed when I was 6. It was 2 days before his 11th birthday. My father passed away shortly after that when I was 8. And, I was an angry little lad, and very mean and abusive, and I hit kids all the time. And my mother took me to counseling and to places, and nothing really helped. And finally she asked my uncle, who was my dad's brother, to help her with me, and he was actually a boxing coach at an amateur boxing gym there in the Gorge. And so I became an amateur boxer for about 8 years when I was a kid, and it did help me, and it also gave me discipline and things like that. And it didn't reduce all of my issues with being angry and violent, but it certainly helped a lot, and I'm forever grateful for that time. As I grew older, though, it also taught me how to hurt people when I drank and got in bar fights and stuff. And in fact, when I was 19, I assaulted a police officer and got sent off to Cedar Hills and out in Maple Valley. I think it's closed now, but and I was literally next to Skid Row bumps, and I was 19 years old, and I'm thinking, why am I here? I don't belong here, and blah blah blah. And the more I got to talking to the other patients there at the recovery center, I realized that I am just like them. I'm just a lot younger, and I hadn't been pushed out into the streets. And I also had a very influential counselor there, Terry W., who frequented the Fremont meeting a lot, and he had over 30 years of sobriety, and he helped me and taught me so much about recovery and what I needed to do. I mean, a lot of it didn't sink in until I finally did get and keep sobriety. But I remember a lot from Terry, and he was so significant in my life. There's a handful of men who have really been significant people in my life, and he certainly is on that list. I stayed sober for 2.5 years, consciously went into a bar at a cousin's bachelor party or whatever it was. It was just really going out and getting drunk. But I was sober, and I was there with 4 of my cousins, and we decided to go to a bar. And I remember going up to the bar and ordering a drink, and them all looking at me like, "What are you doing? You can't do that." And I said, "Watch me." And that very night, I woke up in my car, cold, with puke all over myself. I had punched my windshield. And I had no friggin' idea where I was at. So anyway, that lasted another 3.5 years. And at the end of that 3.5 years, I got into a bar fight with the bouncer, and I broke his face pretty bad, and got arrested a month later. And this is one of the things that I really need to tell in my story is that the events that occurred in my life that got me to the penitentiary were so far-fetched, and I couldn't make them up in a story if I was trying to tell a story in a fictional story. But anyway, a month later, I got arrested after my then girlfriend was blabbing down at the same bar that I told her, don't you ever go back to that bar. She was blabbing about her boyfriend who beat up the big guy in the parking lot, and of course they called 911, and I was arrested and sent to prison for it. I did take it to a jury trial, and being the true alcoholic that I am, they offered me a plea bargain the day before trial that I could get out of jail that day if I just pay for his doctor bills and do a couple years of probation or something. And I told him to, pretty much, I actually told him I'm in the middle of a good book and I'm fine. Let's go. You guys, you made me sit here 59 days. And anyway, so off to prison I go, and then I get in a few fights, actually between county and my first couple months in prison. I was in 6 fights, and the last one I got drug off to the hole, and the door slammed, and this is my life. This is my alcoholism, where the self-will run riot, and all the things that we learn about in the book, and the 4th step and the 5th step, and all those things that we share and hold dear today. Those things were occurring in my life in prison, unbeknownst to me at the time. I didn't realize this, but they slammed that door when I went to the hole, and I started crying because this was just another repetitive, Rod's angry, Rod's violent, Rod's doing this and that, and here I am again in a hole, and I've been to principal's office and detentions when I was in school, from Head Start. In Head Start, I walked around our Head Start building in my little hometown and threw rocks until I broke out every single piece of glass in the whole building. I was friggin' 4 years old, and that's the way I continued to live my life, other than the times that I had sobriety. And it's one of the things that I asked, potential sponsees today is, that have had recovery before, what was the best times of your whole life? Without exception, they always say, when I was going to AA. And I said, well, maybe you had to go to AA, maybe you had to do what we do at AA. And so I went to the hole, they slammed the door, and I cried and cried and cried, and I screamed at God. I said, you son of a bitch, I see you blessing all these other people, but not me, and you did this, you did that, and you son of a bitch, you're not real, and if you're real, show me you're real, prove to me that you were actually there, and that you hear me, and that I'm worthy of your love. In a nutshell, right? So I spent 10 days in there. The only contact I had with anything or anyone was a card that I got from my Aunt Peggy. And it was a card at Christmas time. I went in there on Christmas Eve, 1993. And I got this one card. It was the only mail I got when I was there. And it was about God and how he loves you. And I thought, that's kind of funny, and I toss it. And I get out of the hole, and I did feel different. There was something that had changed. And I don't know if, it was the cleansing of how much crying I did, because I did cry a lot. I've never cried like that ever. And anyway, so I get out, and then I go to a new unit because the guy I got in a fight with's on the old unit, and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I had to go see the sergeant about losing my good time. And I go in to see him, and lo and behold, he was a former Fort Lewis boxing team coach who was actually in my corner during a tournament that I was in when I was 16 years old. And we laughed and joked, and we talked about boxing, and it was amazing to see him. He was in my corner during this tournament because the coach that I had, one of the other great men in my life, Mag Campbell, he had prostate cancer, and he was going through treatments, and he was so swollen up downstairs that he couldn't climb through the ropes. And so the Fort Lewis guy was in my corner, and anyway, he said, just quit picking on the prisoners and do your time. And go home. And I didn't lose any good time. And I remember going back specifically to my bunk and thinking, you just asked God to show you. Did he just show you? And you're just, ignorant and can't see those things, right? So from that day forward, my life did change. And when I got out, a few years later, I married Ronnie's mother, and we had him a year later, and things were pretty good. And she really didn't like me going to meetings, right? And I allowed her to influence me to stop going to meetings. And I also believe that if the alcohol's gone, I should be fine, right? And I was wrong. Another thing that I really want to stress in my story is that untreated alcoholism is real. And, when I don't take care of my spiritual condition, I get into places that are very dangerous for me. And I am prone to drinking, but I'm actually more prone to violence and being not living by the principles of the program. I mean, pretty simple. I'm mean and angry, and I'm that little kid that was busting out the windows, trying to have a good time, knowing that I'm going to get my ass beat, because back then they really beat your ass, especially my old man. And it's sad, but it's a fact of my life. My son obviously became a lot like me, and if I don't stay in this program and work this program and live this program even more so, then those chains can never be broken, in my opinion, right? I mean, I think they say that the generation could skip, but it don't mine, because I can go back a couple, great grandpas that are a lot like us, and my father was, and I am, and he seemed to be, and I can't speak for anybody else, but I know that without a doubt, I am powerless over alcohol, and that my life is unmanageable without the program. Now, the first part of that first step, there's no doubt in my mind that that's true. But when I start thinking that I can manage my life without the program, that second part is very true, whether I drink or not. So if I don't get up every morning and recognize that I am that I'm Rod, recovering alcoholic, then I'm in trouble, I may not drink, I may not hit nobody, but my days are harder, My day needs to start off with that third step prayer, and I include at the end of that third step prayer to help me set aside everything I think I know about people, so that I may have an open mind and a new experience, because I will make things up in my head like I know what you're thinking or what you're thinking, and I get offended by people just because of something I think they might be thinking, and that's a call to my sponsor. Hey, Tom, this is what happened, that son of a bitch, and he's like, oh, well, maybe you ought to look at that. Maybe you ought to write it down. Maybe you ought to, take a different route, or what made you think that you know what they're thinking, right? That's the biggest thing. So there's no doubt in my mind that, I can be insane without drinking. No doubt in my mind. I mean, I lived it, during my marriage with his mother. And I have regrets there. I've never heard my son talk as candid as he did a few minutes ago. And that's good for me, because I know that I did some things that I owe amends for, and believe I have done those amends. But at the same time, he's standing here in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous with you guys, and I trust you guys. You know, I don't trust people out in the real world as much as I trust the people in the rooms. And, you know, certainly I'm not going to trust everybody in the rooms, but that group over there, I trust with my life. And I spend every Saturday with them. My life is dramatically changed. During our divorce, I ran to Alcoholics Anonymous. Actually, the real story is I was running to the East Side Alano Club to go chase Tail because she had had an affair and I wanted to get back, right? And I drove from Camano Island out around to the freeway. I'm headed down through Marysville, and for whatever reason, I have no idea, this was not a conscious thought at all, I turned off and went back through Tulalip Reservation all the way back to Camano Island, and I passed this little church called St. Aidan's, and there's a bunch of cars out front. And I turned around and I went back to there and I said, this has got to be a friggin' AA meeting, right? If it ain't AA, it's probably NA or something, and, you know, maybe I ought to visit, right? It's been well over a decade. And I went in there, and I was literally trying to figure out how I could murder my wife for a week before. Maybe not a week, but a while before. And I knew my son was there, who was a young child, and I knew they're going to come look for the husband, right? And I knew that I wasn't smart enough to get away with it. I'm going to get caught if I do it. They got DNA now, they got this now, they got that now, and oh my God, you just ain't that smart, dude, right? So I held off, and I went into this meeting, and the first two shares, one was Lee from Everett, the other one, I can't remember his name, he passed away. Great friggin' old timers that I just absolutely love, but they both talked about when they were going to kill their wives. Lee was a sniper in Vietnam. And during his share, I don't know that I'm supposed to say this, but he said, I've never had a clearer shot in my whole life. She was right in the crosshairs, and I didn't pull the trigger. And here I am sitting with, you know, happy, joyous, and free in Alcoholics Anonymous. I mean, that was really the message, and I needed that so badly. And that was the first meeting that I went back to. And I made that my home group, of course, and I chaired that meeting for a few years and had speaker meetings there, and just dove back into the program and got back to who I was. I truly believe that the treatment for the disease that I suffer from is the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous in the program. Yep. There is absolutely no other treatment for me than that. You know, for me, Jesus never treated alcoholism. You know, the Jehovah's Witnesses, I have family that are Jehovah's Witnesses in my family. Never did it for me, right? Doesn't treat alcoholism. They're all drunks too, you know. I believe whatever God that each of us looks to or worships or whatever, everybody else's higher power, I believe that higher power gave us Alcoholics Anonymous for the treatment of alcoholism. And I certainly have alcoholism. There is no doubt, you know, to my being. Over and over and over and over again, I tried to quit and I tried to do something different. I tried other drugs. I tried everything. Nothing ever worked because I was always trying to figure it out with this thing between my ears. And until I decided to ask God to help me with that, I never could do it. If I ingest alcohol, I will continue to drink and hurt people and myself. There's just no doubt in my mind. There's nothing more true in my life. I feel good, you know. I feel good about my life. I have a good life. There's 2 specific meetings every week that I attend. My sobriety date is June 25th, 1993. And, you know, I have not had one urge to use alcohol or drugs since since I went to prison. Well, since I went to the hole. I went to the hole in about 6 months into my, incarceration. I actually beat the holy shit out of a guy who had smuggled cocaine into the Clark County Jail in Vancouver, Washington, because I knew I couldn't use it. I could have took it from him, but I didn't want to use it. I knew it was what had gotten me there. It was all of the stuff that I used. Alcohol was my first love. If you had it all on a table, I would grab the Jack Daniels every time first. The other stuff was just to sober me up, just so I couldn't, I could maintain enough not to get arrested. That's the truth. I loved alcohol. It made me a part of, right? And that's what I find in Alcoholics Anonymous. I am a part of my Alcoholics Anonymous group in Stanwood and Camano. And all I ever wanted to do was be loved. During that marriage, my wife, my nephew had 2 children with my wife's daughters. So my stepdaughter and my nephew had children. Those children came to live with me and my wife and our kids. And I remember when we split up, the kids were going with me because I had the nephew who had just, gotten kicked out of treatment again and blah, blah, blah. But I remember the kid was having problems at the daycare, and he was going to the elementary school in Stanwood to get some special teaching from a teacher who was going to prepare him to go to kindergarten. He had the defiance disorder and the attention deficit and all those labels, right? And he would go see this gal named Katie at the school, and he was a model with her. And she said he is absolutely intelligent, maybe overly intelligent. He is an impressive kid. And then he would go back to the daycare. He went to her classroom like 3 times a week, and then they'd ship him back to the daycare, and on the other 2 days, he would be at daycare. And he started crapping his pants. And I would have to leave work and drive all the way back and, get him cleaned up. They said, bring some extra clothes, we'll clean him up, and blah, blah, blah. So that happened for a while, and then one day they called and said, we didn't have any extra clothes, you're going to have to come get him. So I drive from Woodinville to Camano Island to pick up the kid, and I'm just at my wit's end. I'm going through a divorce. I'm violent. I want to be murderous, and I take him home and I get him cleaned up, and I said, let's go take a nap, and we go lay down on the bed, and I grab the phone and I dial a counseling office, and I'm talking to this counselor. Literally, I'm talking to the counselor while he's laying in the crutch of my arm, and I said, I don't know what's going on. He doesn't act like this at the school, but when he goes to the daycare, he craps his pants. I don't know what to do. I'm just stressed. I'm hurting here. I need help. And he leans up in my ear and he says, Papa, I just want to be little. And I said, what? He said, I just want to be little. And I realized at that time, and he's 4 years old, 3 years old. I realized that he was robbed of that infancy and the nurturing and the caring of his mother and his father. And he had lost it. So what he did was when he would go to the daycare, he would do those things because he always got the special attention. Those ladies loved him, and they would clean him up and they would change him, and he'd get special attention. He's the only one there got a bath, right? Got bath, cleaned up, clean clothes, the clothes smell good, and he would get that special attention. And he went to those extremes to be loved, and that was so freaking impactful on my life that I just don't know, right, how other people are feeling. I don't know, and I certainly won't know if I'm not a part of this program. I have to be here to be a part of life, and I just hung up the phone. My whole problems were over. I didn't have to pay a counselor to try to figure it out. He freaking told me because I was open to having a different experience, and so grateful for all of that. You know, everything didn't go perfect. You know, he's not my adopted child that, you know, is going to the Olympics this year or anything, but you know, he's had a rough go since then, because he ended up going back to his real father, who's on like his third year of I think a 6-year sentence in Oregon. His mother is strung out. You know, thank God to Al-Anon and my friends. You guys have helped me to take care of me, because I always neglected me and helped everybody else. And, you know, I put my son aside for these kids, and I put my son aside to work, you know, 80 hours a week so I could continue to, you know, the craziness of, you know, really what we do, which is work our lives away. And you know, I belong here. There's no other place on the planet that I feel more comfortable and more welcomed and more a part of than an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, no matter where I am. I mean, I've been to a lot of meetings in a lot of different places, and they always feel good. I always feel better when I leave. And in the book it says, this is a life, help me, you shall not miss.
Yeah.
You know, they tell us. And how in the hell did they do that? Back in the 30s. You know, they wrote a book about me, and all of us probably, back in the 30s. It has to be true, right? And I am forever grateful. And I thank you guys. It is an honor to come anytime to share at a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. It keeps me alive and healthy just as much as my heart does, I think. So thank you so much.
Thank you.